right. Good evening, everybody. I don't know if you're watching this in the evening or if it's the morning or if it's the afternoon, but I pray that whatever's going on, that you're doing good. So excited that we have at least this medium in which to be able to engage with each other. You guys are on the third level of my house right now, so welcome up here upstairs, and call this the upper room and just kind of the hangout theater room. But I'm excited, you guys, to be with you, and I know that we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful class. And so stay tuned. I'm going to be sharing my screen with you guys as we go throughout this lecture. So you want to make sure that you take notes on what you can, because your quizzes will be based upon our lecture, and I'm going to walk you through it. It's going to be a great time. All right. So let's get ready. We'll have our screen share here, and boom, you should be able to see exactly where I am. All right. And so what I'm going to do is see if I can slide this over. We'll get our slideshow here. And now we're ready to go. All right, so this is our lecture that is primarily going to be on social service organizations, but we're going to start with just a little bit of a review. So one of the things that you're probably asking is, what have I learned so far? Where am I in this class? We've been in HBSE 2, been with Dr. Lee Johnson for a couple of months now. What are all the things that we've learned? So we started off with a conversation around macro matters. That as much as social workers are engaged in micro work, which is helping individuals achieve their individual goals or their family goals, but things that are pertaining to them, that most problems that we endure as people are not stuck at simply the micro level, but that there's always a macro influence. And so we've learned in our first round of classes that I've got to look at what's happening in the larger economy, the larger political system, the larger social systems that are impacting or creating the conditions that my clients are responding to. And so we learn the importance of looking at the large picture, how to connect the dots to see that there's a connection between the young man who is invested in gang membership and in gang banging or in drug related behavior to what's happening with the political and social systems in his community. And we discovered in this that if I don't take time to work with that client around those macro issues and I only address their micro issues, then I'll never really resolve the problems that lead my clients to coming to me. We also discovered with that when I'm working with individuals, that many times we can blame them if we don't work with the larger systems that created some of their problems and stresses. And so we don't want to put all of that pressure on our clients. Sometimes they're doing the best they can do with what it is that they have. And our job is to help reshape the larger context, the larger system, in order to be able to work better for everybody involved, the marginalized, the vulnerable, the disenfranchised. We want everybody to be there. So we started off there. We moved from there into understanding that context and content are very important. So a lot of times we look at the content of what's being provided, but we often skip the context. And that was that historical piece of a people's history of the United States, of where I need to understand what people have gone through, what their experience has been, in order to be able to serve them in a just and appropriate way. And so we want to make sure that we're always taking a look at the full context, whether it's the individual, the family, or a larger system. I need to understand history, because history informs where people have been. It informs why they are where they are now. And it also informs maybe what I should do to be more responsive and less oppressive in the actions that I take with them. That was a wonderful lesson that was there. We also learned our GIM model, and all of y'all better be able to say this model. What are those 7 steps? All right, I hope you all said them out loud. I want you guys to have that, because I want to make sure that as you leave HBSE 2, that you understand the basic construct. The thing that makes social work different from charity work is the fact that you're guided by science and you're guided by principles that lead to a particular area. So the GIM model, whether you are working as a micro worker or as a macro worker or on the meso level, you are always using the GIM model to inform what it is that you're doing. I'm excited about that. I think we have that. We move from there in order to make sure that everyone has an understanding of the lens of theory and how theory informs what we do. That a good social worker is always looking through the lens of theory. And I gave you guys 14 different theories. So everything you have, you guys, from sociological imagination, which is incredible, right? One of my favorites, which says that you have to take in the historical context of what's going on as you look at somebody. That sure, there can be individual situations of why people are where they are, but whenever there's disproportionate numbers of people who are going through things, I've got to look at the larger context. And sociological imagination says I need to be able to see what's there. Maybe it's not there as clear as everybody else can see, but it's there. I have that as a job. We learned about social learning theory, about how we learn certain behaviors and how we can rewire ourselves. I understand that my behaviors, my thoughts, and my feelings, all these things work together in a way of understanding. That led us to our other one with cognitive behavioral theory of how we can have the assumption that people can change and how we can help them to change. We learned about conflict theory and labeling theory and symbolic interactionism, paradigm shifts, ecological perspective, critical theory, which range from critical race theory to feminist theory as well. Social exchange theory, structuralist functionalist theory, strain theory, CBT, empowerment, systems theory, and the list goes on. I'm going to teach you about 2 or 3 more theories today, but that we have these lenses of theory and we can use this in order to guide us in what it is that we're doing. All right. So I want you to make sure that you're holding on to those theories. Remember, I wanted you to pick 3 to 5 that you really, really know, and they become in your regular bag of how it is that you do what it is that you do. All right. Next, we began reading The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and we discovered that we can't help people change their situations by being the savior. We talked about this thing called the savior complex, where a lot of times as social workers, we want to come in and we want to fix everything for people, and we leave them actually worse when we have to leave. We understand that our profession is a short-term profession. We're crisis interventionists. We help people to get on, but we want to give them the tools so that they can take care of themselves. Follows the old saying, if you buy a person a fish, they can eat for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, then they can eat for a lifetime. We want people to be able to eat for a lifetime. So we learned from Paulo Freire that people must participate in their own liberation. And we learned some techniques for how do we get people involved. We can't do that with the banking deposit system where we give you everything and then it's done for you. No, we have to have a problem-solving method. And that's what we got from Pedagogy of the Oppressed. We also dealt with task groups and treatment groups. And so you guys know that there are how many task groups? All right. Hopefully you got that answer right. And there are how many treatment groups? All right, perfect. I hope that you got that right. When it comes to our task groups, we know that we have teams. We know that we have treatment groups. We know that we have staff development groups. We know that we have admin groups. We have committees. We have board of directors. We have delegate councils. We have social action groups. These are the numbers of groups. And based upon whatever situation we're responding to determines the type of group that we need. Okay, so if I have a client that comes to me and he's been suspended from school a multiplicity of times, and he's having issues at home, and he's using the restroom on himself, and he's 12, 13 years old, and he's behind in his classwork, then what do I want to put together? Am I putting together a team? Am I putting together an admin group? Am I putting together a social action group? Of all the task groups, which one do I want to reach to? Okay, well, now I have a new tool for war. I say, oh, what we really need is a treatment conference, okay? That's the best tool that I can use in this case. So as a good social worker, what do? I start getting people from many different disciplines to come together. We do a treatment conference around this particular client in order to help him or her get to where they need to get. You see how that works? If I have an organization that is looking to create change because so many kids have been hit by cars because there's no stop sign in the neighborhood, Okay, what do I need to do? Well, do I need to start with a social action group? Probably not. That's a little too aggressive, although we may get there, because the social action group, remember, is going to deal with protest. It's going to deal with how I confront people. But I may want to start with like a delegate council, right? Something to where I get people together from the community, or maybe even a committee. Let's talk about this to find out, how can we get what we need in this neighborhood, right? So you have different tools, and then you also have your treatment groups, right? We have growth groups, education groups, support groups, therapy groups, and socialization groups. And based upon what's going on there, I pick what is needed for a situation. So there, 13 more tools that you have in your toolbox of how you can respond and create social change. We're not even, we're almost halfway through this list, you guys. You've learned a whole lot if you kind of unpack this, of what you've learned so far this semester in my class. I'm excited about this, just going through it. All right. We learned also about group development and what it takes in order for groups to come together. We learned that there's 5 stages of this group development. So you got the forming of a group, right? You got the storming, things kind of get a little rocky and fall apart. We got the norming, right? Where people start to settle in into their roles and things are starting to happen. Then we move into the performing, of where the group is really moving, everything is going the way that it should. We're actually reaching the goals, and eventually into a journey. And we found that this is important because as I'm facilitating groups and helping people to get where they want to go in life, I need to know the stages that they're in and what they're going to go through, so I can help guide that process. I also gave you notes on what happens during those stages and what you can do as a facilitator in order to help things to run better. All right. You read the book Evicted. Phenomenal book, you guys. Heartbreaking, but gave us a real good picture of the economic inequality that exists within our country. In that book, you dealt with a number of things that can be done in order to level the playing field. What's interesting is that now that we have this COVID-19 situation, we're seeing that there's a lot of things that are possible. Didn't you notice that one of the first things that the American government said they needed to do was to make sure people don't get evicted? Why was that such a big deal? Because in this country, losing your housing is a big issue. One of the reasons why I had you guys read that book. And so a number of people who are unable to work, if they don't get their next check, they're going to be on the street. So the first thing the government had to do is to say that we're going to make sure that no one gets evicted. And so you learn some incredible things in there to what our country is dealing with, and maybe why we shouldn't even be in this position. Maybe there's some things that we need to do in order to address the housing inequality in our country, to make sure that folks don't have to be one paycheck away from possibly being on the street. The last book that you read was The New Jim Crow. If you haven't already heard, I'm going to take it on myself that you have read The New Jim Crow, and I'm going to give you an A on that quiz. So everybody's getting 100% there. Yay, go Dr. Lee Johnson. All right, real good. Pat myself on the back. All right, so The New Jim Crow, I hope you read it though, gives us an idea of organizations and institutions that don't work. You're gonna watch a video this week that's gonna talk about when organizations don't work well. Okay, and what you see is a prison system in this country, it really doesn't work well, and it's a failure of the social system, the political system, and the larger organizations that just have not made things work. And so our lecture today is really going to kind of follow in that lens. All right, so that's a lot. You've learned a lot already. Let's go a little bit further to take us a little deeper into this macro world. So here you guys on your slide, you see people gathered around the world. And this is the idea that together we can solve all the problems that are in our world. Aren't you seeing that today? That in COVID-19, if we all do our part, if we all shelter in place, if we all look out for each other, people are being more kind, people are looking out for each other. You go to the store, people are speaking. When we hold on to each other, we are able to achieve more. And so it kind of works with that word team, T-E-A-M. Together, everyone achieves more. As we hold on to each other, we're able to do so much more than we could as individuals. And this is the heart of social work. Social work is really built in organizations, and the macro world in particular is that we form organizations because we know that together we can do more and we can serve more and we can be a blessing to the entire world. So you see this picture, this is us locked together, men, women, all different colors, all different backgrounds. If we work together, we can indeed save the world. So what is an organization? There's so many different types of organizations. You can see them here before you guys. Non-governmental organizations, international organizations, nonprofits, we're going to talk about those. Charities, a little bit different in how they function. Governments, resistant movements, organizations like schools, corporations, armed forces, voluntary associations, political organizations. Anytime a group, Bloods, Crips, right? IBM, Dell, Apple, Google, these are all organizations. CBU, organization. Anytime a group of people come together for a common goal and they're working collectively and collaboratively, that's an organization. They're doing something together. It can be 2 people, it could be 3 people, it could be 3,000 people. Whatever size it is, whenever there's a common goal and people are working together, they have formed an organization. And we recognize organizations in different types of ways. In fact, Jesus Christ and the 12 homeboys were an organization. They worked together for a common goal, okay? And so no matter which way you look at it, organizations have been driving a lot of what we do. And so when we look at organizations and social work, we find that social workers provide a majority of America's mental health services. I just wanted to show this to you and look at all the different ways in which this is provided. Child protection agencies, schools, family service agencies, government agencies, private practices, hospitals and mental health facilities, community centers, correctional institutions, right? These are all places where you can be employed. That's one. And these are places where generally we do what it is you're being trained to do. Most of you, after you get your MSW degree, will go off and work for a social service agency, an organization that provides this kind of work. Now, here's my hope. What we're going to look at a little bit today is that many of these organizations don't do things the right way. They don't work well. And what my hope is that we're going to train you guys in such a way to where you do what you need to do and you do it well, and you help the organizations that you work for work in better accord. All right? Our next one is that organizations are, you see the 4 that are here. So organizations are social entities. This looks like stuff that could be on the quiz, doesn't it, y'all? Okay. Social entities are made up of people with all their strengths and failings. They're goal directed, so they exist for a purpose. They exist to provide services and resources to help people with designated needs. They're designed as deliberately structured, coordinated activity systems. So they have a way in which they do what they do. They have a structure, they have a culture, they have paradigms, they have models, strategies, supervision models. All those things are in place. And last but not least, they're linked to the external environment. So they're constantly interacting with other systems and other organizations in order to help people achieve their desired goals. So social agency and social services agencies are a type of organization, and they provide social services that typically employs a large range of helping professionals, including social workers, office staff, paraprofessionals, right? And sometimes volunteers. This used to be a big part of nonprofit work, was volunteer basis. Social service agencies generally serve some designated client population who have some defined need. Okay, so some agencies work exclusively with homeless individuals. Other agencies may work with folks who've been trafficked in some type of way. Another agency may work with children. Another one with adults or those who are elderly, but usually there's a target population. This is very important to recognize. Services are provided according to a set of policies regarding how the agency should accomplish their provision. So each agency has a style in which they do what they do. And so you want to make sure that you're able to identify that. These are just some ways of social agencies. So what are the different types of social service agencies? We have public social agencies, Okay, these are often run by some designated unit of government. They're usually regulated by laws impacting poverty. So you can see some of the examples that are here. DPSS would be a public social agency. Riverside University Health Systems, a public social agency. Behavioral Health, Department of Aging, Department of Mental Health. These are all public social agencies, okay? They provide a lot of services, but they're very bureaucratic in nature, which means that sometimes very sterile, sometimes cannot be as creative, but they're the largest provider to masses of people. But we're going to discover that public social agencies often can do things a lot more effectively and efficiently and culturally appropriate for a target population than public social agencies, even though they're smaller. Watch how this works. Private social agencies are run by people not employed by the government, okay? So they are what's called 501c3s, okay? I'm gonna say that again, a 501c3. I don't want you guys walking around talking about a 501c, okay? A 501c3, and there are 501c4s as well, which can fall as nonprofits as well, just have a different function. But many of you will be comfortable with 501c3s. These are tax-exempt organizations that provide valuable services for the macro environment. Generally, they receive money through donations, grants, service fees, tax benefits. Of course, they're tax exempt, so that's a big save, okay, that maybe a for-profit doesn't have. They're presided by a board of directors that formulates the policy, hires the executive director, makes sure that the agency stays convicted to its mission and that is functioning appropriately. But these are private social agencies. This is the majority of what's out there that you can be hired for to really do some creative things, and even more that you can start and run yourself. I'm very excited about that. That's an opportunity that's there for everybody. And then there's propriety or for-profit social agencies, and they're very similar to the private social agencies, but their major purpose is to make a profit for the owners, okay? So generally you'll see fee for services, right? I charge services from consumers. I can get grants. I can do contract work. And you'll find that a lot of these are hospitals, physicians, pharmacies, realtors, correctional institutions, private equity funds. These are what we call proprietary or for-profit social agencies that provide great needs to our community, okay? But they do it in different ways. Let's get a little bit of background now to find out how this works. So in classical organization theory, right, this is where everything started. And this was the scientific management, bureaucratic theory, and administrative theory all together in classical organization theory. And what it said essentially is that it was introduced by Frederick Taylor in the early 20th century, and that there was this hostility between management and employees. And so what classical organization theory did, it says we need to make sure that we maximize profit, maximize production, and we're gonna do that. And if employees get on board, then cool. If they don't, get rid of them and get others, because there's always people who want it to work, okay? So classical organization theory really didn't care as much about employees as much as it cared about its end product, okay? Watch these 4 principles. In classical theory, jobs and tasks should be studied scientifically to develop and standardize work procedures and expectations. Everybody does the same thing the same way, right? Number 2, workers should be chosen on a scientific basis to maximize their potential for being trained and turn into productive employees. So we're not looking for a whole lot of individualism. We're looking on somebody who fits the mold. Number 3, management and employees should cooperate with each other and work together to follow standardized procedures. That makes sense there. And management should make plans and task assignments, which workers then carry out as instructed. Notice how structured this is and no room for creativity, all right? Within this, you get the 6 basic principles of management. I'm gonna let you guys kind of read through this on your own, but essentially what you have here is bureaucracy at its best, right? Management plans, organizes, commands, coordinates, and controls. The 6 basic principles: there's division of labor. This is what you do. This is what your manager does. This is what the middle person does. Each person has their authority and responsibility. Everything is centralized. We delegate authority. There's command. There's unity of direction. Everybody just do what I tell you to do, and you go along. Think about your larger systems, child welfare systems, Department of Aging. Unfortunately, many of them still employ these methods. And what we know today is that this is not effective. People do not thrive in these environments as employees, which is why people have burnout. But in classical bureaucracy, this was how everything ran. Okay, Max Weber, we're going to get a quote by him in just a little bit, but he talked about how it's so well defined. Relationships are impersonal. You don't really get to know people. You just follow the rules, follow the procedures, follow the policies, and that's it. You could be highly trained for your job task, but there's minimal discretion on the part of employees. There's a whole lot of rules and regulations, and ends up kind of being a boring place to be, if you ask me. All right, look at this Max Weber quote. When fully developed, bureaucracy also stands in a specific sense under the principle of sine ira ac studio, which means without sympathy or compassion. Can you imagine that? Think about all the times when clients go to a social agency and they feel like nobody cares. Okay, that's bureaucracy, where there's so much red tape that it seems like the policy is more important than the people. That's bureaucracy. And look what he says. He says, "Its nature, which is welcomed by capitalism, develops the more perfectly, the more the bureaucracy is dehumanized. The more perfectly it succeeds in eliminating from official business love and all purely personal, irrational, and emotional elements which escape calculation." All right, this is classical. What eventually happens is in the late 40s, 50s, 60s, there starts to be this shift into neoclassical, right? New classical organizational theory. And this was an attempt to make better the factory type of jobs that people were in and start to look at employee satisfaction and economic effectiveness as the goal of the organizational structure, not just making a profit, but how do people feel about their jobs, okay? You can find that Philip Selznick contributed well there and said organizations are made up of individuals whose goals and aspirations may not coincide with the organizations. Very true, right? I might have some different goals. So one of the leaders of this movement was Chester Barnard. And I want you to know who he is, okay? He defined an organization as a deliberately structured system of tasks and activities undertaken by 2 or more people. And organizations are based on cooperation and have conscious, deliberate purpose. In order to achieve coordination and cooperation, organizations offer inducements, right? Salary and benefits. This is something that was new. We got to make people be motivated to want to be here. He believed that people join organizations when the inducements exceed the contributions, right? If you give me so many good things, then it'll make me want to stay. We're going to find that there's some level of truth to that, but not always true, all right? He discovered that organizations have 2 types of motivation. Number 1 is the motivation to participate, right? The motivation of an individual to stay with an organization and to perform at a minimally acceptable level. And what they decided in neoclassical theory is that it's the responsibility of managers to balance inducements and contributions so that people stay motivated to complete their work. And after managers attends to workers' motivations to participate, they should direct their attention to the workers' motivation to perform, right? So first I focus on, have I given you all the things so that you can succeed? And then I want to push you to perform, right? So this is the inducements to produce contributions that are greater than the minimal because I have incentivized you, right? Look at the changes from the classical view. So now the focus changes in the neoclassical from production results to how people work together in an environment. Number 2, it was a moving from controlling worker behavior to I actually want to motivate you, to coach you to perform. And one of the big things was here, maybe if we pay them more, they'll actually perform better. Now, We know that that's sometimes true, but that's not always true. Just because you give somebody more money doesn't mean they're actually going to do a better job. There's some other things that need to be considered, and we're going to find that in another theory. Number three, it considers workers as individuals with emotions and needs and desires instead of blank pieces of paper that have to be controlled and directed, okay? So the neoclassical gets us into a much better place. We care about people. We want them to be motivated. We want to incentivize them. And this is kind of the area that we're in right now, right? I want to introduce at this point what are called human relations theories. And this is sort of the new way that we're starting to move into. And the core ideas of the human relations theory is that if I work for a company, I want to feel important and I want to feel useful. It's interesting because these are core tenets, particularly for millennials, okay? They want to feel useful, they want to feel important, they want to feel like they belong there, okay? Number two, employees have strong social needs, and these needs are more important than money in motivating employees. So imagine places like Google who are starting to say, hey, we're gonna pay you, but we're also gonna offer free childcare, and we're going to do all these extras for your family in order to make sure that you're taken care of. And then many people say, wow, that's even more important than the salary, right? Because my kid is gonna be right here with me. They're gonna be at the childcare that's run by my company. And so I don't have to run all over the place. I actually prefer that more. See, these are the human relations theories. As you guys are creating your own organizations, I want you thinking about these kinds of things. How can I make an organization that really makes people love working for you, okay? Number three, managers should make workers feel important and allow a modicum of self-direction, right? A small mode of where they can direct themselves and control. So I'm not micromanaging. I give people their task and then I allow them to figure out their way to get there, right? Because through that, you can unlock people's creativity to come up with some incredible things. Number four, if workers are satisfied with their supervisors and work groups, they'll become more productive employees. If I feel like I'm doing something and it's really important and I'm being encouraged and inspired, then I might produce at an even greater rate, right? See how this human relations theory is so much better than classical organization theory? I hope you're nodding your head and saying yes, okay? In traditional sociology and social work, you have what's called theory X and theory Y, and now theory Z, okay? I want you to understand these nuances because as you're looking at organizations and or creating your own, you need to be able to identify, are they working in a classical bureaucratic way? Maybe this organization is neoclassical. Maybe they actually are employing some human relations theories. Are they theory X? Are they theory Y? Are they theory Z? I want you to know all those differences, all right? Let's walk through them. Theory X and Y suggest that management styles of administrators and supervisors and organizations have a big impact on two things: productivity and satisfaction of employees, okay? These two theories were developed by Douglas McGregor. Let's look at them. In theory X and theory Y, we see attitude, direction, responsibility, motivation, and creativity. This is a good chart to study, okay? Look, on theory X, we dislike work, we find it boring, and we'll avoid it if we can. Theory Y, I need to work, and I want to make and take an interest in it. Under the right conditions, I can enjoy it, right? Theory X, I hate it, but I gotta do it, all right? Theory Y, I gotta work, so I'm gonna try to make the best of it that I can, right? Theory X, I have to be forced or coerced to do my job. If you don't stand over me and watch me, I'm gonna do all other kinds of things, right? Theory Y is I can be self-directed, right? I know what the goal is and I can be motivated in order to reach that. Look at responsibility. Theory X, I'd rather be directed than accept responsibility. I cannot handle responsibility. Theory Y, I actually seek responsibility and I want it under the right conditions. Look at theory X or motivation. I'm motivated mainly by money, right? Theory Y, I'm motivated by money. I want money, but I also want to accomplish what I've been trained to do. I want to feel fulfilled in my job. And look at creativity. In theory X, most of us have little creativity. Theory Y, I can come up with new ways of doing this if I'm given the opportunity. All right? This is very important. When I'm looking at an organization, even your practicum, is it a theory X or is it a theory Y organization? What do you think? Kind of talk out loud. Not sure? Okay. Something to think about, right? I have included another slide in here to break down theory X and Y. You can always go back and check this out. So it's here just to give you a further explanation of theory X and Y, but I think you guys kind of get the picture from what I've shared with you so far of theory X and theory Y. Another one, people hate work, people like work, people have to be forced to work, people drive themselves. You get the difference here. So if I gave you a case example and asked you, is this organization theory X or theory Y, you'd be able to easily say, oh, okay, they're actually giving training to their employees to help them with things in their own personal life and with work. Okay, that must be a theory Y organization, right? Be easy to get there. Okay, just another slide here that breaks down the differences between the classical, neoclassical approaches so that we have that, right? Very easy. Guys can go back, look at this slide, gather everything you can from it, but I think you pretty much have the picture. Let me introduce this here now then, feminist theories and organizations. What we've seen is that we have so many organizations that, like society, have been very degrading and exclusionary to women, right, in particular. And there's some real crazy gender dynamics. I mean, and now, you know, you start to look at, you know, how do I treat someone who may be cisgender or somebody who is binary or non-binary, somebody who may identify differently than the normal constructs. Well, we've had some very oppressive things happen in our organizations. And so what feminist theory in organization theory says is that I've got to have these 5 pillars in order to make sure we're taking care of people. Watch this. Number 1, I got to use a gender filter. Due to rampant sexism in the macro environment, management and workers must be vigilant regarding the treatment of women in a fair, non-discriminatory manner, which means that we're now pushing organizations to watch the language that's used instead of, you know, maybe saying, you know, assuming that the manager is a he, right? Maybe we need to use language that is more open and more fair so that everyone is included. It says that language should be filtered. Number 2 is empowerment, right? Do I empower women to take on leadership roles? Very important. Number 3 is that that women being in positions of power is a political statement. We're going to talk about that in just a second, right? Women have to become aware of their own opinions, feelings, and situations. This is that consciousness raising that's part of critical theory and feminist theory in particular, right? And so women should recognize their power and should look to improve the conditions for other women because it's been such an oppressed group, right? Very important. The importance of process with how things get done, women should be included, and that there's strength in diversity. Women ought to be included, and this should include gender, race, age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, across the board, that there is strength in diversity. Now, California took bold steps in this area. In 2019, California passed a law that said that every company, particularly those that have a lot of employees, must have at least 1 woman on their boards. And by 2021, those numbers need to increase for the majority of having 3 women on their board. A lot of people have looked at this and said, this is sexist, this is wrong. This law, the state of California, is currently being sued because there's companies who are saying this is not fair. I don't want to have to think about bringing on a woman when I'm looking for a board member. But imagine that we've had to do this because it's been the boys' club forever. Men have dominated organizations, which means they're dictating how social services and all other services and provisions are being provided. And maybe the only way that we're going to get women at the table is that we've got to legislate it. Now, I want you to remember, during the civil rights era, we had to legislate for African Americans and people of color to be at the table too. So this is not new. This is like affirmative action, okay, taken in a direction for boards. Look at what's at the bottom. We found that women made up 25% of board seats at Fortune 100 companies, just 25%. That's crazy. While minority women made up just shy of 6%. Talk about atrocious, you guys. Among Fortune 500 companies, women were at 22.5% of board seats, and minority women at just 4.6. No wonder we're having so many services that are exclusionary and that don't take in the context of people, because those who are most marginalized aren't even at the table to make decisions. Okay? This is why organizations are so important, and why you guys doing what you're doing and understanding organizations as a social worker and knowing how to make that change is so important. We're almost at our end, you guys, here. Organizational culture is another thing I want you to be familiar with. And so organizational culture deals with the values, beliefs, and assumptions about appropriate behavior that members of an organization share. Each organization develops a unique mixture of values, standards, presumptions, practices of how things should be done, and eventually what should be the makeup and the habit of this particular organization. A disadvantage is that sometimes the culture is set and it doesn't allow for new ideas to come in. And the goal of a social worker should be to support innovation and risk-taking to help the organization move past the status quo, right? So what's a good social worker do? We always check out the organizational culture. How do things run here? Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? You got another video that you're gonna watch about healthy organizations. And you discover that some organizations are very unhealthy. They're toxic with how they run. And your job as a social worker is, how can we change this culture? Let's say you get hired as a manager or a supervisor. What are some things you can do in order to make things better? I was so excited today. I got an email from one of our students who shared with me that in her internship, not her internship, on her job, everybody's been feeling so low with the COVID-19 coronavirus. And so one of her managers told her, hey, you know what can we do to lift people up? And she said, well, I think we can do a Christian mindfulness room with music and with breathing and with meditation. We've been doing it at CBU, and I think it will help. Well, the manager said, I've been trying to think of something. I couldn't think of anything. Go ahead. I want you to do it. Well, that's innovation, right? That's innovation. And what they're doing is they're trying to improve the culture so that people don't feel depressed. That's beautiful work. That's what we want to do as social workers. We want to introduce new ideas that make work fun, makes it better, makes us more effective, makes us more efficient, because everybody does well when we work like that. All right. What have we learned in this era of coronavirus is that we need to use technology in social work. This has been a big thing for me, and finally it's like the world has forced us to get there. So social work is very antiquated with how we do things. Have you guys noticed that at your practicum sites? I mean, people do things in a very old way. Still paper files, you still gotta go out, you gotta take forever to do certain things. It's really old, right? So we can use technology in order to do what we do better. What are the benefits? It's gonna be more convenient for the clients and the workers, right? Imagine if we provide therapeutic services like this, right? And I don't have to worry about getting childcare in order to get to therapy, but I can be with you in front of my computer, my kids can be over there, and everything's okay. That works for everybody, right? What about being accessible? It's cost effective, quick response time. So technology allows us to do all of that. I want you guys to think about how you could use that in an organization that you create, okay? How technology can make the job better. right? So I want us thinking about this technology and social work. So right now you have this big thing with telehealth, right? With hospitals who are beginning to use other means, apps, websites, push notifications in order to communicate with their patients. As social workers, what if we did some of the same things? Imagine how incredible that could be. I want you thinking about that and those kinds of activities so that as you step out into the work world, you're kind of blowing them away by the incredible things that you're bringing, innovating, because you're not stuck in a classical theory or a theory X kind of thinking, but you're almost like theory Z, right? Theory Y. I don't even think I presented that to you guys yet. All right. Political economy theory, you guys, says to us essentially that when you are running an organization, you got to have two things. You need to have political connections and you need resources and money. That no matter who you are as an organization, you're not going to be successful if you don't connect with the mayor, the governor, city council. You need those relationships. Organizations that thrive because they're connected to political resources. And those political resources often unlock monetary resources. Okay? Political economy theory says, I got to have that. The greater the organization's dependence on these resources, the stronger the influence of external interests, groups on processes within the organization. And organizations are in constant struggle for resources, almost battling each other, right? To gain organizations power, they can form coalitions and alliances of individuals. And then there's contingency theory, which means that everything is hanging on the next thing, right? It maintains that each element involved in the organization depends on other elements. So can we provide good services? Sure. But we probably also need resources in order to provide those good resources. So there's no one way fits all, right? There's that kind of answer that it always depends. The strength of this theory is that it's always flexible and it's open to different approaches. It's contingent upon the circumstance. Its weakness is that sometimes it can lack direction, right? Culture quality theories just says that I want to build a strong set of shared desires, and this is your theory Z. So theory X, theory Y, you guys have those ideas. Theory Z is that I want to improve the culture of the organization, and when the culture's improved, everybody's going to perform well because there's flexibility, there's trust, there's training. So think about those task groups, okay, of staff development. Those are culture quality improvement strategies, right? That is theory Z work of trying to make things better. So look at theory Z kind of in the middle here of long-term employment, collective decision-making, individual responsibility, slow evaluation and promotion, implicit and formal control, moderately specialized career plans, holistic concern for employees, right? Including their family. This theory Z says, let's move away from you being an employee. You're more like family. And how can I take care of you? When social agencies have this approach, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, most social agencies have not gotten here, right? We still see those who are utilizing social services as kind of like a drain on the system. It's almost like, what do you want? Let me hurry up and get this. You know, it's almost like we're blaming them for being there. Where theory Z says, no, that's not how, we don't want to label people like that. And part of how we do that is by making sure that our employees feel so good and so empowered about doing their job that they actually treat our consumers as customers. Would you treat a customer bad if you're running your own business and you wanted them to come back? Or were you going to look for customer satisfaction? Type Z says, dang, I want them to be satisfied, which means I got to feel good as an employee. Think about when you go to Chick-fil-A, right? It seems like every time you go to Chick-fil-A, like they're so happy and so excited. It's almost like, dang, they're too excited, right? But that's what Chick-fil-A goes for. They go for this theory Z. We're going to create such a healthy culture that you love working here and you're going to treat everybody well because of it. All right, so what do I want you to do? I want all of you to create your own organization. This is your assignment for this week. You're going to write it up. You're going to turn it in, and I'm going to get to see what you come up with. Your organization needs to have a name. It needs to have a mission. It needs to have a vision. I want to know where you're going to get funding from. I want to know what type of model you're going to use. Is it going to be theory X, theory Y, theory Z, right? I want to know what kind of theory, what type of politicians are you going to be aligned with? Okay, what's your target population going to be? How are you going to run this organization? And maybe something that's 1 to 2 pages, you guys. There's no way for you to go wrong in this assignment. Just a way for me to evaluate that you listened to this lecture and what you took away from it. I want you to be creative. I want you to come up with things that are unique. And I want you to try to do something that you would actually want to create and run. Okay, how do employees that work for you, how do they feel? How do they feel? What kind of managers do you have? What type of training do you provide? What type of innovative things are you doing? I want you to be creative, and I want you to create an organization. You're going to turn that into me, and that's going to show me your engagement for this week. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are excited to do this assignment. If you do a great job at it, it can at least be a prototype, a base for what you might create later on in your career. All right. I've been excited, you guys, about this lecture. I think it's been fantastic. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the time that we've had together. You're going to watch the videos that are going to be posted in your Blackboard. So I want you to take notice of those. And as you put it all together, you're creating your own organization. I think this can be a fun week, all right? And a great move forward into understanding macro social work. All right, was that a good lecture? I hope so. I enjoyed myself. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. I hope that it's all good. You guys, can I tell you, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'm excited for what we have in store as we go forward. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.